Finding the words to describe how legendary NHL 94 is like trying to nail Jello to the wall. It's no easy task. And yes, that NHL 94, not the Super Nintendo version, the superior version, the Sega Genesis version. Paradise on Ice, the godfather of the one-timer, my favorite Sega Genesis game ever. To those not familiar with retro video games, NHL 94's significance holds no bearing to them. It's just another video game lost in the shuffle of the thousands of sports games out there in the wild. Just another entry in the NHL series. But to the people that experienced it during the 16-bit generation of video games, NHL 94 has a certain allure and level of greatness to it. A mysterious aura surrounding it that just can't be simply explained. The legacy of NHL 94 cannot be understated. The word masterpiece only scratches the surface of the ice that can be easily removed by the Zamboni when describing this game to others. To those who still own it, this game holds a special place in their collection. To some, it might be the game that brought them closer to their sibling. To some, it might be a timeless classic that they played with their friends on the weekends during their childhood. To some, it may have started their love of retro sports video games. Regardless of your memories of NHL 94, this game is beloved and cherished by many, even to this day. For me, NHL 94 defined my childhood when it came to video games. I cannot think of a game that I played more than NHL 94. My brother and I would have some of the most epic battles while playing this in my parents' basement on an 8-inch color TV. My brother is 7.5 years older than I am, so growing up as kids, the age gap was pretty significant. Because of that, we had different interests while growing up. A 10-year-old wanted to do, more different things than an 18-year-old, as you can imagine. But the one thing that we had in common, the love of sports video games. Nothing brought us together better than NHL 94. And nothing made us go at each other's throats than rewatching your amazing goal 20 times on the instant replay. Oh man, look at that goal, baby. What a thing of beauty. God damn, what a sick pass. Let's see that one more time in instant replay. Oh, one more time. Oh, one more time. That's right, baby. That is sweet music to my ears. To me, this game is synonymous with the masterpiece. It's the Empire Strikes Back of hockey games, the Terminator 2 of 16-bit glory, the Lord of the Rings trilogy of EA sports games. But why is that? What makes this game so good, so classic, so timeless? What sets this apart from every other hockey game out there and during its time? Well, the answer is easy at the end of the day, but it's hard to explain in just words. I remember the first time I popped in NHL 94. It was like watching Darth Maul ignite his double-sided lightsaber for the first time in the movie theater. Holy shit, this is gonna be epic. Going through the menu was like watching the Fellowship of the Ring walk through the mines of Moria and fighting the Balrog. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. It was a sight to behold. Watching all the NHL teams' logos get shuffled through while deciding what team you wanted to play, the scratched up ice rink in the background, I knew this was going to be epic. Do I want to rack up 8 points as Wayne Gretzky on the LA Kings? Or make an amazing pass by Mario Lemieux? Or make a diving save like Grant Fuhr? Or crash through defenseman as Jeremy Roenick on the Blackhawks? It was an amazing time to be alive. I still remember the first time I scored a goal and stared at that red light flashing. I felt like a 4-year-old looking at a police car with its lights on racing down the road. You know, I actually wish someone took a picture of me for the first time I realized that you could watch the in-game highlights in between periods. I can't even describe how cool I thought that was. I still remember it too. I walked away from the game to go use the bathroom, and when I came back, I thought the game started without me, only to realize that the game was shifting through the game highlights like I was watching SportsCenter at 2 a.m. Amazing. And I still remember what teams I picked as my first game too. The New Jersey Devils versus the New York Rangers. I'm not gonna lie, as a New Jersey Devils fan, I was kinda bummed out that Marty Brodeur wasn't in the game, but playing as Chris Terrari was great. It was then that I realized that the damn rosters were always a year behind the title year. NHL 94 meant that it was the 92-93 roster. Damn. Oh well, I got to play as Marty as he was the backup for the Devils in NHL 95, but that's for another video. In late 1993, this game had it all when it got released. Hard checks into the boards, making guys say hello to their teammates on the bench, laying out unsuspecting wingers on the ice, leaving them injured for the remainder of the period or the game. The classic cheap wraparound goals as the goalies stacked their pads like Curtis Joseph in overtime. Goalies skating out of the crease to pass it like Ron Hextall and Marty Brodeur. Four-way player support to play with or against your buddies like a long night of Goldeneye on the N64. Penalty shots when you had the penalties turned on, with offsides turned off of course. Shattering the glass boards after a hard slapshot from the blue line. Battery backup to save your individual performance. New expansion teams. And of course, the biggest game changer of them all, the one-timer. Believe it or not, NHL 94 was the first hockey game to implement the one-timer. Now, I know what you're thinking. Is this guy really seriously harping on the one-timer? Dude, please, just stop. Just let me explain. Now, you have to rewind back to 1993 when this game came out. Back then, sports games were relatively new in the overall grand picture of video games. There were some great sports titles during the 8-bit generation, like Tecmo Super Bowl, for example, but the ability to improve on a sports game during the early 90s was beyond endless. It was like getting to second base with a chick for the first time. Shit, man, you mean to tell me that I can go further? Every year, the graphics and new features that were added to a game made the game that much better and worth picking up. You just never knew what was going to be added to the game. It's kind of hard to grasp, but back then, these additions were a big deal. It's one of those things where you just had to be alive to live through to understand. I mean, look at football, for example. In just a matter of 6 or 7 years for home consoles, you went from this to this. I mean, Jesus Christ, this is literally night and day. Now, in terms of modern consoles, you don't really get big jumps like that in graphics and content like you used to. I mean, look, is there a huge difference between Madden 18 and Madden 24? I mean, yeah, I guess it's different, but is your mind going to get blown between the two? Hell no. As I've said in earlier videos, my biggest gripe with the retro video game community is the lack of love of sports games. It's so obvious that the reason why there's so much hate or lack of love of it is because, as time goes on, games in the Madden, NBA 2K, NHL series usually end up becoming cookie-cutter sports games that, really hold no value after 2 years. I get it. Look, it's like flipping through a JCPenney Brawl catalog as a teenager. After a while, once you've seen one, you've seen them all. So I get that they're not collectible because they're not unique enough, but still, a specific sports game can hold a very special place in a lot of people's hearts. Now, when I decided to make this video, I actually played a lot of NHL 93 before dishing out my nostalgic opinions, and look, I gotta say, NHL 93 is a fantastic game, a solid A+ in my opinion. It's a forgotten gem that was made famous from the movie Swingers, but of course, it was later overshadowed by NHL 94. But after playing NHL 93 for hours and then moving on to NHL 94, it was so obvious how much better NHL 94 was. Like Goldilocks sticking her spoon in Baby Bear's porridge, this shit was just right. Slightly faster gameplay making the flow of the game perfect, slightly better AI, seeing the NHL logos on the ice, the real organ music that coincided with the arena that you were playing in, it just felt right. It felt like hockey. It felt like the NHL. This game took the greatness of NHL 93's pick-up and play formula and perfected it. They perfected an A-plus level game. Mark Lesser, we salute you, good sir. Also, look at these new features to NHL 94. Manual goalie control, a shootout mode, penalty shots, amazing organ music, one-timers. These were a big deal back then. Add these new features to the simplistic gameplay, and it's Beethoven's Ninth Symphony on ice. The shootout mode I felt was a great mode to add. Simple, but great. I had a blast playing this with my brother. It kind of reminds me of the battle mode in Mario Kart, where this sort of became a secondary game in itself. Having a penalty shot added to the game was also another great feature that made the game more authentic. Although a full season mode wouldn't be added until NHL 95, this game did have a playoff mode, which acted as its season mode. You could choose between one game takes all tournament style or the classic NHL rules best of 7 series. Speaking of organ music, with over 70 new pieces of organ music, one of my favorite things to do was to play different teams and hear the music from around the league. Also, let's be real for a second. How many times did you watch your instant replay when you shattered the glass boards for the first time? Don't lie. I think I spent a solid 5 minutes. It never got old. Also, we need to address the white elephant in the room when it comes to this game, the wraparound goal. What are your thoughts on this? Put it in the comments section below. Does it make the game better or does it make it worse? I thought it made the game better in my opinion. It's always a heated debate among hardcore fans, but the way I look at it is that it's easier to score these type of goals against the computer, but when playing against your friend and they're controlling the defense, the goalie, and checking the shit out of you, it's not as easy to score these type of goals, and the game just becomes an insanely fun free-for-all. Now, of course, we need to talk about the fact that there's no fighting in NHL 94. It was a big deal at the time that they removed fighting, but what do you want? Do you want the NHL teams or do you want fighting? In my opinion, I would rather have the NHL teams. I mean, look, when playing NHL 94, the game is so fast, fun, and arcade-like that I feel like getting into fights kind of slows down the flow of the game. That's just my opinion though. Everyone's different, but overall, it sucks that they removed fighting from the game, but it is what it is. It would have been really cool if they came up with a feature where you had to put in a password to include fighting. You know, kind of like what they did with Mortal Kombat on the Super Nintendo, where you had to put in a password to get the blood. But hey, I mean, at this point, the game's what, 30 years old, so it is what it is. Like all sports games, the season before the year in the title is always reflected in the games. For NHL 94, it was the 92-93 season where Patrick Waugh's Habs defeated Wayne Gretzky's Kings. It was a classic matchup that saw 3 games go into overtime, giving Waugh yet another Conn Smythe trophy. Added to the game were newer teams, the Ottawa Senators and the Tampa Bay Lightning, which had their first season in 92-93. But the game also included the league's 2 new expansion teams for the upcoming 93-94 season, the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim and the Florida Panthers. Pretty cool, not gonna lie. I remember playing this and thinking how awesome it was to play as the Mighty Ducks just right after the movies got released. I mean, look, don't get me wrong, the teams I just mentioned are total trash in the game, but it was still fun to play as them. Funny how something so simple would make the game better, you know? Now, I know what you're thinking. How could they have the new teams that started in 94 in the game when they didn't play in the 92-93 season? Well, they actually duplicated the players to reflect the upcoming season. For example, Guy Hubert is a starting goalie for the Mighty Ducks, but he's also the backup goalie for the St. Louis Blues. I thought this was an awesome idea and a great way to expand the game. But I was spoiled though. NHL 94 was the first hockey game that I got on the Sega Genesis. I never experienced the earlier or later titles until later on. I never really cared to pick up NHL 95, 96, 97, etc. because I loved this game so much. I didn't want to ruin it for myself, and I just knew without even playing the other games that they would never top this. Funny though, I still remember we got this game from my brother's friend. I still have his instructions that he gave me. Memories. As you can see, I own all the NHL games except for NHL Hockey, aka NHL 92. The series in general is the best sports series on the Sega Genesis, hands down. Better than Madden in my opinion. My second favorite game in the series is NHL 95 where, although it's not as amazing as 94, it's still a masterpiece in my opinion. And it even had the full season mode, along with other cool features such as the ability to sign, trade, and release real NHL players, and it even had the ability to create one's own fantasy players. But still, I experienced all these games in the series and nothing captured lightning in a bottle like NHL 4 did back in 1993. Overall, this game is a masterpiece and I cherish it even to this day. What makes this game so great is the fact that anyone can pick up this game and play it and learn its mechanics within the first few minutes. People who don't even care for hockey love this game. The classic, easy to learn, but hard to master. I always rank this game in my top 3 favorite Sega Genesis games depending on my mood, but it usually lands at number 1 when I actually sit down and think about how much fun and time I spent with this game. Everyone has their own opinion on the other 16-bit entries such as, NHL PA 93, 95, etc. But the general consensus is that NHL 94 is the magnum opus of the NHL series. Nothing will ever top this, mainly because how do you top perfection? How do you duplicate the Mona Lisa? How can you remake Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope? The answer is simple. You can't. Nothing will ever match the level of awesomeness of this game. As later entries became more in-depth, more realistic, more complicated, the series slowly lost its magic that was once captured by Mark Lesser and his team at EA back in Maine in 1993. If you never played this game before, you owe it to yourself to play this masterpiece. You need to experience greatness on a 16-bit console. If you played this game before, then you know exactly what I'm talking about, man. NHL 94 has always been and will always be a legendary game that will be played for years to come.